Hi, and welcome to the Stethoscopes to Swaddles podcast, episode number 116. So, today on the podcast, I am doing a podcast that I think I already did, but I wanted to shine a light on it from a different perspective, and especially now that it's summertime and most of you or your kids are out for the summer and there's a lot going on. And I want to talk about the invisible load of motherhood. And this podcast episode was actually inspired by a conversation that I had with two women at work. And we were just discussing how it's not even like our partners are not aware that we have this load, but it's like, okay, now that we have this load, then what do we do with it? And so I wanted to talk to you today about the invisible load of motherhood. I wanted to share just some of the thoughts that clients share with me about the invisible load, some of the common emotions, and then I want to share with you some mindset shifts on the invisible load of motherhood. And also, at the very end, I have a small segment for you to share with your partner if you are struggling with, like, how do I explain this to my husband or wife or whatever your partner is. And I thought, okay, well, we can just have a little segment where you could just say, hey, go to this part of the podcast and listen to it. So today we are going to take a deep dive into this experience that is familiar to so many of us and yet goes very often unrecognized and unarticulated. And that is the invisible load of motherhood. Hey, Mama, you deserve a life free of overwhelm and burnout. Welcome to the Stethoscopes to Swaddles podcast. I'm your host, life and mindset coach, Shiro Bergbauer. I'm also a wife, mom, and CRNA. This is the podcast for high-achieving mamas in medicine like you and I. Together, we'll learn how to navigate the ups and downs of working motherhood. If you're looking to thrive in your relationships and overcome overwhelm in your motherhood, marriage, and medicine, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Stethoscopes to Swaddles podcast. So when we think of motherhood, these images of a mom being nurturing, connecting, and the creation of life flood our thoughts, right? But there's this largely unspoken side to this amazing journey, and it's a relentless tide of responsibilities, decisions, and emotional labor that often remains hidden from view. And I wanted to collect the stats on this, but you know what? I was like, when you deal with it, it is like a lot. And there's been the conversation about being a mom is like the equivalent of having another full-time job. But the reality is, as women, we are faced with so many decisions, so many responsibilities, and there's a lot of emotional labor. And this load, when we carry it, particularly carried by moms, right? We do play a huge role in like the daily life of our family. We shape their experiences, their well-being, and the relationships that our families create, right? And so I just want you to think about like the constant mental checklist that you have as a mom. And, it could be as simple as like managing appointments, remembering kids' birthdays, to the emotional work of just like caring for the entire family's well-being. This load can be an overwhelming burden, and we need to talk about it more. But I think what's even harder about this role is that while all of these things that we're doing as moms are important, they usually go unrecognized and undervalued. And I don't know if I've shared on here before, but I had a situation that happened to me a couple of months ago where my car, I was rear-ended by somebody, and on a Thursday, and then on Sunday we were driving my husband's car and it like literally just decided to stop working in the middle of the road. My husband was traveling for work the next day on a Monday, and we're having this conversation about who's gonna call the repair shop and who's gonna do all these things. He had to travel, so he wasn't going to coordinate any of that. And Monday, which happens to be my office day, where I still have coaching calls, I'm still running my business, was also the day I was going to deal with his vehicle, my vehicle, and all of that. And so what happened was I had asked my husband if he could take an Uber home on the Thursday he comes back, because he would have to book an Uber in the morning. He didn't even know that you can reserve an Uber anyway. And this is not like to dog my husband, but it was just interesting to me because I was navigating being basically single parent for the week, navigating these two vehicles have issues, calling the repair shop, calling a mechanic. I know nothing about cars. And the mental checklist that I was going through, I was just like, I think I signed up for way more than I could. By the following week, I was overwhelmed. And also, I was like exhausted by making decisions. My husband asked me a question about something, and I was like, I just lost it because I could not even create capacity to make one more decision. I was done. So, all this to say, we go through this all the time. We have tried to normalize this conversation. I've shared on here about Eve Radowski's book, Fair Play. We've talked about it, and I think that most of us are aware what the issue is. But what I wanted to share this perspective was to understand, like, what are the emotions we have when we are dealing with this invisible load? What are some thought errors that we have dealing with this emotional load? And what are some mindset shifts that we can make and strategies? So what I want to do in the podcast going forward is really reflect on the framework that I use for coaching, which is usually understanding situations, right? Situations like your relationships, your parenting, your job, your relationship with your parent, whatever it is, and then uncovering what beliefs, assumptions, biases, or thoughts that we have about these situations, and what are the resultant emotions. And then, because we know that those emotions and feelings set the stage for us to either take action or not take action, I want us to be aware of what the thought errors are so that we can first recognize them for what they are before we start taking action. Because what I've learned is that when you take action without understanding the emotion behind it, it's very short-lived. And I think to involve your prefrontal cortex requires you to look at the thoughts, look at the emotions that those thoughts are creating, and then work from that. So I just want us to just have this frank, open conversation. We're going to pull the curtain on this aspect of motherhood, and we're going to start a conversation to acknowledge, validate, and ultimately better understand this unseen but impactful experience. So whether you're a mom who carries this load, which is many of you listening today, or a partner, or a child, or a friend who is seeking to better understand and support the moms in your life, this episode is for you. So buckle up, and we'll delve into the intricate world of the unseen labors of love and devotion, the invisible load of motherhood. So, what are some of the assumptions that contribute to the mental load that moms experience? I want to share some common assumptions. Of course, this list is not exhaustive, but I want to share some. So, number one is this assumption of default responsibility. There's this assumption that moms are the primary person responsible for managing household tasks, childcare, and emotional labor. So, this assumption creates this unequal burden because moms then feel that there's an imbalance because the distribution of roles is obviously not 50-50, right? What happens then is that all default decisions are kind of pushed towards mom. Number two is assumption of competency. There's this assumption that moms possess this intricate knowledge and all the skills that are required to manage the mental load, and that somehow we're just born with it. It's not even Maybelline. We're born with it, right? And I've seen this in my own relationship where like my husband will say like, how does this and this happen? And in my mind, I'm like, you have to think about it and then you do it and then it happens, right? And so there's this assumption that as a mom, you should naturally know how to handle everything and that you shouldn't need guidance or support. And some of this is perpetuated by society and our own parents and how they parented us. And we just saw them being the go-getter and the end-all be-all. And we just assumed, oh, this is just how I'm supposed to show up too. Number three is assumption of anticipation. So there is this assumption that moms should always anticipate and proactively address what every person in the family needs without explicitly being communicated to about it. So what happens is like we're supposed to know what our kids need. We're supposed to know what our partners need. And they don't have to tell us. We just have this all-knowing ability to do it. And so what happens is that this assumption creates this burden on us to predict and meet everybody's needs, which adds to our mental workload, right? Number 4 is the assumption of emotional labor. There's this assumption that as moms, we should be responsible for managing the emotional well-being and emotional labor within the family. This includes regulating emotions, providing emotional support, and mediating conflict. The assumption then adds an additional layer of mental and emotional burdens to us because now we are supposed to, co-regulate with our children, co-regulate with our partners. We are supposed to help our children self-regulate because they can't do it. We are supposed to self-regulate. So it's this idea that it falls on the woman to have that emotional labor. Number 5 is the assumption of control. And there's this assumption that moms should have control over every aspect of household management and decision making. What happens is then as moms, we have this assumption that we don't have to delegate. And so we're reluctant to delegate or share responsibilities. And we kind of gatekeep some of these responsibilities because we've been told we are in control, right? So that just increases the overwhelm and the decision making. Number 6, which I think is one of the worst, is the assumption of perfection. There's this assumption that moms should strive for perfection in their parenting. Society is telling us all of it, and we're supposed to do that with our parenting, our household management, and how we look and how we show up in the world. And what happens with this assumption is that it creates this undue pressure on us to meet very unrealistic needs and standards. Then that just further contributes to our feelings of inadequacy and our increased mental load. 7 is the assumption of invisible labor, right? So there's an assumption that the invisible tasks and mental work performed by moms is not as important or worthy of recognition as the tasks that are actually visible. And recently my friend sent me this meme, and it was tongue-in-cheek. Actually, it was a reel, and it was like my husband put the trash away. We should give him the putting the trash away medal, right? It's because we are told our work is not really important. We signed up for it. You wanted to be a mom, suck it up, and do it. But what happens is that the work that we do and the mental load then becomes undervalued and unappreciated, and it creates even more issues. And when these assumptions continue to be perpetuated, right, then it inhibits open communication. It also increases the workload for us because we're not evenly distributing responsibility and we're not sharing decision making. But if we can at least address them, we can then start to alleviate this mental load and create a more equitable and supportive environment for us as moms. What are some of the emotions that the mental load can provoke? I want to talk about this because we're going to talk about some thought errors and we're going to talk about some mindset shifts. But what are some emotions? Number 1, which is the most predominant, is overwhelm. I was thinking about this because in the last 3 weeks, I've coached 2 clients on their kid's birthday party. And I was laughing about this today because I was doing endoscopy, and in between cases, I was coming up with all the things that need to be done to plan my daughter's birthday party, which is exactly a month away. As I was doing it, there was all these layers. So I'll just kind of walk you through it in my mind. And I'm sure this is familiar to you. So she wants to have the party at this lab, the science lab, right? So then I have to find the class list of all her classmates, the email list of the parents, because it's summertime. So dig through the emails from the school year, find the emails, invite these kids, right? Then the science lab has a waiver. I need to figure out how to get all the parents that are coming to sign this waiver. I need to figure out what time the party is going to be. Does it work out for kids, parents who have multiple kids, and nap times and travel, and it's summer, right? And all of that. And I was just thinking when I was talking to my clients this past 3 weeks, when we are talking about kids' birthday parties, we know they're not a necessity. We know they're not even a requirement, but we continue to do it. And our partners might not even be aware of the work that goes behind actually having a successful birthday party. I think another example of this overwhelm is when you think about Christmas and the holidays, if you celebrate Christmas or whatever holidays, right? There's always this moms are doing the most and they don't have to, but they are doing the most. And there's a sense of overwhelm, right? So the overwhelm is really from the sheer volume of tasks and responsibilities. And it can feel insurmountable at times, right? And it can also just perpetuate the overwhelm. Number 2 emotion is stress. When we're constantly judging multiple tasks and responsibility, and sometimes we don't have downtime. And I know stress is not necessarily an emotion, but it's still a state of being. It can contribute because it's a stressor. Number 3 is anxiety. I think all of us have gone through this where we are concerned that we forgot something important, or we are not able to fulfill all the responsibilities to the desired standard. And so our anxiety is increased. And I've shared on here like how I kind of messed up and sent my daughter to school on spring break. Earlier this year, I found out that my daughter was invited to join a gymnastics team, and I didn't know, and she stayed on a regular team, on a regular group, and she could have been 6 months ahead. So there's a lot of that, just like, am I forgetting something? Am I forgetting someone? Am I forgetting a birthday? Am I forgetting an important thing? Just constantly running lists in our head. Number 4 is guilt, right? And we talk about this on this podcast all the time, is that there's this idea that if we can't manage everything perfectly, or we take time to ourselves, instead of focusing on our family's needs, that we are being selfish. So then that just creates an emotion of guilt. But the resultant emotion too is number 5, which is resentment, because it feels like the load is not being fairly distributed, right? So then we might have feelings of resentment towards our partner, or even our kids, or to other people who could share the burden, but they don't. It could even be family, where it's like, oh, I wish I had childcare and this and this and this, so I could take care of this other situation. Number 6 is loneliness. And I share this with caution, right? Sometimes managing this load can be a lonely task. And most of us then start to feel like we're the only one. We also start thinking that other moms can't fully understand or appreciate what we're dealing with. But the reality is, I think that is because we cover this like mental load with shame. And so we feel bad for even speaking up about it. Number 7, again, not necessarily an emotion, but what we're talking about is exhaustion. Not only physical, but also emotional and mental fatigue, because managing this load is a never-ending job with very little opportunity to rest. Number 8 is frustration, right? The feeling of being constantly busy, but you're not accomplishing anything, or whatever you're accomplishing is not even being acknowledged because nobody can see it, right? So it can create more frustration for you, and it can create conflict in your relationships. So what are some mindsets or thought errors that women who deal with the mental load experience? So number 1 is, I need to do everything perfectly, right? So this belief implies that perfection is the only acceptable standard, and it leaves no room for us to make mistakes or be imperfect. It places an immense amount of pressure on us as moms, which also just perpetuates that inadequacy and self-criticism. Number 2 limiting belief is, I'm solely responsible for managing the mental load. And I want you to know these are thought errors because they're not actually facts, but we get to where we believe them, and it impacts how we show up as moms. So when we believe that we're solely responsible for managing the load, then we assume that we have to shoulder the entire burden of the mental load, and we exclude others from sharing responsibility. So it actually creates some gatekeeping, but it creates a sense of isolation and prevents us from actually embracing and growing our support network. Limiting belief number 3 is, my worth is defined by what I accomplish. So this belief ties self-worth to productivity and achievement. So the more we can accomplish with these invisible things that we're doing, it just creates like, oh yeah, then I'm more worthy. But that neglects the intrinsic value of us being present, of showing love, and prioritizing our own self-care and taking care of ourselves. So this limiting belief can actually lead you to be constantly looking for external validation, and it just perpetuates the thought that you're never going to be good enough. Limiting belief number 4, which I think is so common with all of us, is, I must say yes to everything. This belief fosters a sense of obligation for us to fulfill every request or commitment, and it leaves little room for personal boundaries, right? So it can cause you to overextend yourself, to neglect your personal needs, and then you feel overwhelmed and burned out. Limiting belief number 5 is, mistakes define me. So this belief views mistakes as how we can gauge our personal failure. Rather than looking at mistakes as an opportunity for growth and learning, it just perpetuates our self-doubt. So then we are in decision paralysis, and we are also reluctant to take risks. The other limiting belief is, I have to do it all at once. This belief places unrealistic expectations on you as a mom, because then you're like, I have to multitask and I have to accomplish everything all at once. It can lead to feelings of isolation, overwhelm, because then that just becomes an unmanageable burden. Number 7 is, limiting belief is, it's selfish to prioritize myself. This belief, right, has been kind of drummed into us. Like, how dare you try to carve out time for exercise and rest? Like, you're a mom, like, suck it up, right? And it actually just like makes us put other people's needs before our own, and it creates guilt, and it prevents us from prioritizing our well-being, which ultimately compromises our ability to take care of other people, because if we're not well, then nobody's well. Number 8 limiting belief is I should know and do everything. So this belief assumes that you as a mom, you showed up in this gig without any instructions, but somehow you should know all the answers and you should be proficient in every aspect of motherhood. And I know I'm saying that tongue in cheek, but there's literally this like mindset that can pull you down when you're like, I am supposed to know everything. I'm supposed to do everything. And that just creates inadequacy, self-judgment, and it also makes you more reluctant to ask for help or support. Number 9 limiting belief is I need to be in control of everything. This belief fosters a need to have complete control over every task and decision, which makes it impossible for you to delegate and trust other people, right? Again, another way we end up gatekeeping from our partners. So it creates this responsibility and it hinders us from like actually growing a support system. Number 10 limiting belief, which is the last one, is my self-worth is dependent on external validation. And what really the belief is like, I'm not good enough, but then people can tell me that I'm good enough, right? So we rely then on external validation as the primary source of self-worth, and we neglect the importance of self-acceptance and self-validation. So what happens is that we're constantly seeking other people's approval, but we're constantly feeling that they're judging us, and therefore our confidence, our self-confidence is shot. So first we have to identify these limiting beliefs, right? To even be aware that they exist, and then we can challenge them. So before we go into how we even challenge them, I want to share 6 ways in which these beliefs kind of impact us, right? So number 1 is that we can get into all or nothing thinking, which then we start to perceive situations as either perfect or complete failures without considering nuances or gray areas in between. So for example, you may feel like a failure if you can't accomplish everything that you put on your to-do list, but then you disregard the effort and the accomplishments that you actually did achieve. Number 2 is catastrophizing, which involves magnifying small problems and setbacks and imagining the worst case scenario, while at the same time underestimating your ability to cope with the worst case scenario. So, for example, you imagine that if you forget to pack a snack for your kid's lunch, then the child will starve and you're going to be judged as a negligent parent. Number 3 is personalization. So this means that you start assuming excessive responsibility for negative events, or outcomes, even when they're beyond your control. So for example, if your child fails a test or they get a low grade on a test, without even considering what factors contributed, you start to make it mean that you're a terrible parent, you should pay more attention, and something's wrong with you. Number 4, which I think is like a big one, is should statements. So one of the things my clients laugh when I say that is like, I'm like, stop shooting on yourself, right? So we're like, I should be able to do this. I should be able to like achieve this. I should be blah, 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 blah. I should have. And I just want you to notice when you say like, I should, these are such rigid rules and expectation that you think you should live up to, but like you never question where you even came up with these expectations, right? You just like made them up, and now you have this unrealistic burden on yourself, which can just increase your guilt and inadequacy. Number 5 is mind reading. This one is like one of my favorite. It's when you as a mom assume that you know what other people are thinking or feeling, and often you're assuming that they're thinking negative things or judging you. So, for example, if you show up late for a thing at school, you immediately believe that other parents are judging you or are probably talking about you, even though there's no evidence to support this assumption. And then number 6, which is the last one, is discounting the positive, right? So you're dismissing or downplaying positive experiences, accomplishments, or feedback. So this happens with my coaching clients, and like we build awareness around it is when I will say, you're a great mom, and then they start looking for ways in which they're not. Instead of focusing on the fact that they've been complimented for being good parents, they are like focusing on the perceived mistakes, on the areas in which you fall short. And I want to say this with a caveat. Of course, our brain is wired to focus on the negative, so that's usually the default. But I think it's also important when we hear it constantly that we're doing a good job as a mom, and we just accept that praise and feedback. So I shared on social media recently, I was on a cruise with my family, and we had all finished eating, and my daughter had walked out the restaurant as I was signing the check with my husband and his parents. I was like finishing up and there was a couple at the table next to us. My daughter ran back into the restaurant crying and I didn't know what was happening. And I just like gave her a hug and like we sat there for a couple of minutes and I validated her emotion and we talked through it. And as we were getting up to leave, the lady just like stopped me and she was like, I just wanted you to know that you're an awesome mom and you're doing a good job. It took everything in me not to cry, but it was so like supportive to hear that from another woman. And she shared with me that they had adult kids who were in their 20s and learning as you go as a mom, it's kind of hard. But it just felt good to have somebody remind me that I was doing my best, that I was, giving this motherhood thing my best shot and feeling supported through it. We're going to talk about what are some mindset shifts that you need to have if you're struggling with the mental load. Number one is shift from I need to do everything perfectly to I prioritize progress over perfection. So understand that perfection is an unrealistic expectation and start to embrace the idea that making progress, learning, and growing are more important than striving for a standard that you can't achieve. So giving yourself grace, giving yourself permission to make mistakes and pick right up. Number two is shifting from the thought error that I'm solely responsible to shared responsibilities lead to stronger bonds. So recognize the power of involving other people to support you in managing this mental load. And by sharing this mental load, by sharing the responsibilities with your partner, your children, or your support network, your load is lightened, but it also creates better connections and more teamwork. Number three shift is shifting from my worth is defined by what I accomplish to my worth extends beyond my productivity. So start to challenge the belief that your worth as a mom is solely tied to your accomplishment, your children's accomplishments. Recognize that your value goes above and beyond what you do, and that the most inherently valuable things are your presence, your love, and the care that you provide your children. Number four is shifting from I must say yes to everything to setting boundaries is necessary, right? Understand the importance of the powerful no, but also why setting boundaries will protect your time, your energy, and your mental well-being. When you start noticing the things that don't align with your priorities or the things that overwhelm you, learn to say no to those things from a place of self-compassion, from a place of, I care enough about you to know that I'm not going to do a good job at this thing that you're asking me to do and that it's going to cost me my peace. And therefore, the answer is no from a place of love, right? Number five is shift the mindset from mistakes define me to mistakes are opportunities for growth, right? Embrace a growth mindset and start looking at mistakes as a chance for you to learn and grow. So when you make mistakes and you give yourself permission to make mistakes, you can learn from them. And then you move forward with a new wisdom and increased resilience. What I like to think about is like evaluate what's working. And then maybe instead of looking at your mistakes as like fault of yours, look at it as this is an opportunity for improvement. Number six, mindset shift is shifting from I have to do it all at once to pacing myself is essential. So avoid overwhelming yourself by trying to tackle everything at the same time and instead start to break down your tasks into smaller manageable chunks and allow yourself to be paced. And remember that progress is made by taking a step at a time, right? So Rome was not built in a day, neither will your entire motherhood experience be built in one day and checking off your to-do list. Give yourself an opportunity to be flexible with yourself. Number seven is shifting from the thought that it's selfish to prioritize myself to self-care is essential for my well-being, right? Start to recognize that when you take care of yourself, it's actually not selfish, it's necessary. Prioritize carving out self-care without feeling guilt because self-care gives you more time to replenish your energy, to maintain balance, and to be more present for your loved ones. And I know that this is not obviously like something that comes to us easily, but what I've learned is like sometimes if I just express to my family, like I am just like at my wit's end, I'm tapped out, just need to go for a walk, or this literally just happened this week. We have been traveling a lot with family and I started to feel like I was craving just some alone time with myself. And so I told my husband, we'll make things work where I'm going to go on a staycation on the weekend. And it's been a while since I did that. I used to do that quite a bit the year before last. But yeah, I'm just going to take a weekend, stay at a hotel, be in town in case there's an emergency, but like just have time to myself. Take naps, wake up late, like feel like I'm taking care of myself. And when I come home from these weekends, I'm usually so much more recharged. I'm usually like more flexible with my family because I've had time for myself. Just remember the value of self-care and whatever form of self-care it is. It could be taking a walk. It could be taking a nap. It could be exercising. I have been following this mom, and I don't want to call her out on here, but her stuff is pretty public. She does like bodybuilding competitions, and she's a mom of two. She's divorced. She's a CRNA. And I'm just fascinated because when she shares like her workout and stuff, like she's very clear that for her, it's like almost it's a form of self-care. And I just think that is so fascinating because I am obviously not a physical fitness like driven person. So for me, I'm like, wow, that's self-care. That's great. It's just so amazing to see her like putting herself first and pouring into herself so that she could be the best version of mom for her kids. All right. Mindset shift number 8 is shifting from I should know and do everything to it's okay to ask for help and seek knowledge, right? So give yourself permission to ask for help and knowledge, right? Like if you don't have the answers, you don't have the answers. Nobody does. So reaching out for support is a sign of strength. It's a sign of building your resilience. It's not a sign of weakness. Actually, people who don't need help usually are the ones that need help. So just ask for help, ask for support. Number 9 is the mindset shift from I need to be in control of everything to accepting help and letting go brings relief, right? Understanding, again, that gatekeeping needs to end and that if you relinquish control over certain tasks or decisions, you can actually alleviate your stress and lighten your mental load. So embrace the support that's being offered to you. Embrace the support that you can pay for. Allow people who want to take on responsibilities to take them on. Number 10 mindset shift is shifting from my self-worth is dependent on external validation to I validate my own worth. So release the need to have external validation and instead embrace self-validation. What is your worth? What are your efforts? What are your achievements, right? Focus on those things. Focus on the love that you pour into your role as a mom, a partner, a healthcare provider. Focus on that. How are you making this world a better place by just being here? Right? Now, remember, these mindset shifts take time and practice. So be patient with yourself as you start to integrate these new perspectives into your daily life by embracing self-compassion, right? I want you to like show up from a place of like, I am a friend to me. How can I start changing these mindsets and be kind to myself at it, right? I want you to start noticing when you are downplaying your strengths and celebrate them instead. And then also remember that this journey is a journey of growth and a journey of self-discovery. So we don't stop growing. We don't stop learning. You're continuing to learn new things about yourself. In fact, it was funny when I was creating this episode, I was like, I think I did an episode on the mental load, but I was like, well, this is a different perspective and I need to share it. Like, what are some mindset shifts? What are some experiences that I've had in the year since I did the last podcast on how my clients are dealing with the mental load? So that's it for strategies as far as mindset shifts. The last thing I want to share with you as far as what to do, some actionable strategies, and then we'll share some mindset shifts for partners to support you. So number 1, as far as actionable strategies, is delegate and share responsibility. Start communicating openly with your partner and family members who are available to support you or whatever support network you have. Start delegating tasks that you can share the mental load because collaboration lightens the load for you and it also creates a more balanced distribution of responsibility. So be honest about the needs that you have. Be honest about delegating. And please, 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 when you catch yourself gatekeeping, bring yourself back to center and remember why it's more important for your partner to know how things are done, what things you want to have done, rather than keeping them from your partner and then getting frustrated that they're not helping you. Number 2 is create and maintain systems. So whatever routines and organization tools that you can use in your family that help you, keep track of tasks, keep track of events, keep track of appointments, use those. So it could be using Asana, it could be using a Google Calendar, to-do lists, Google Keep, whatever it is that you can also openly communicate with your partner so that all that mental clutter is in one place instead of like, then you have structured systems instead of having just like information in your brain that nobody has access to. Number 3, I will reiterate this, prioritizing self-care, right? Make self-care a non-negotiable priority. So set time aside for activities that recharge and rejuvenate you. It could be exercise, it could be hobbies, it could be literally hobbies like gardening, it could be relaxation, or even spending time with your friends. Taking care of yourself is so crucial for your mental and emotional well-being. And if you have to cut off some activity that your kid does in order to practice self-care, I want you to think about that. Why is it so hard for you to decide that your child can't have this one thing so you can have me time, or you can create space for yourself? Just question that for yourself. Number 4 is practicing time management. And there are various episodes on this podcast that deal with time management. And so if you are looking to find systems, I have a time management podcast episode where I talk about brainstorming and calendaring and using the Eisenhower matrix. That's a good resource for you if you struggle with time management. It's actually one of the things that I coach a few of my clients on, and they have made such great strides in delegating and managing the mental load. So effective time management techniques like batching some similar tasks together, setting deadlines, and also avoiding multitasking. Multitasking is not for humans, it's for computers, right? Efficient time management will allow you to focus more effectively, and it will also reduce your mental clutter. Number 5 is seek support. So reach out for support when needed. If you need to lean on your partner, your family, your friends, support groups, ask for help. And sometimes help can be asking for help with childcare, asking for help with household chores, or just emotional support. Use those resources that are available to you to lighten the load and also provide you with necessary breaks. So it was interesting. I was scrolling Facebook, as one does, and there was a lady who was a life coach, and she had posted this ad. What I found interesting is that the way she worded the ad was that she was talking about being a support person for moms. What I found interesting was that some of the comments were basically it's really sad that in society we don't have the support we need, that you have to pay for it. And in my mind, I was like, I don't think that's sad. I think that's amazing that you may not have family available or the best resources available, but maybe you have the financial resources to hire somebody to support you. I just thought it was interesting that the perspective of the person posting the comment was more oh, this is terrible, and why are you offering this service? And my perspective, I think I would have thought the same thing even if I wasn't a coach. Having experienced the power of having a coach was yeah, but it's great that she's out here offering the service because we all need it. Yeah, we talk about the village, but sometimes the village has to be paid for, right? The village isn't as free as it used to be when our ancestors were living in caves, and it's okay. It's fine. And in fact, that conversation, that post prompted a conversation I had with one of my clients who's also a friend. She was saying how, when you say you have a life coach, it just sounds so bougie, right? But if you have a life coach, because you can afford to have a life coach, it makes your life so much more amazing. So it's not really bougie. It's actually up-leveling your life. It's not a luxury as such. It's actually a way for you to create the life that you want, and you deserve to create the life that you want. Anyway, steps off that soapbox. So number 6 is outsourcing or automating household tasks. Find the tasks in your household that you can outsource, right? Or automate. It could be you considering using a meal delivery service, or hiring help for cleaning or household maintenance, or using tech to do administrative tasks for you, right? It could be I know there's apps now that are available that are your online virtual assistant, and they can move things around for you and automate your bills, automate your auto pay. So all your bills are automated. If you could do that, if you have the resources to do that. I just believe in the principle of Marie Kondo, up-leveling my life in terms of the things that don't bring me joy. Laundry is just one of those things. I have been fortunate, and my husband and I have been fortunate to be able to have somebody do our laundry for a cost, right? So those are some things that I don't want to do, that I can obviously have somebody else do it. But I also know that it's not available to everybody. There might be a time in my life where it's not even an option, but for now it's an option. And my daughter called us out the other day about the fact that we don't do laundry, and I just thought it was hilarious. But she was like, oh, so you just want to be lazy? And I was like, well, I guess if you want to look at it that way, I just don't like to do laundry, right? So what can you outsource? What can you get somebody else to do it that costs you less. Because what I think we forget is like some things cost you more when you do them yourself. So the way that looks like to me is like, I think, what is my income generating capacity for the hour? And is this activity something that if I outsource, I could create more time to do work that I love and create value in the world and make money, right? So don't always think about it as like the price tag of the thing that they're charging you. Think about it. What is the cost of not outsourcing? What is the cost to your mental health? What is the cost to your ability to be fully present in your relationship and your parenting? All right. Number 7 is establishing clear communication. Clearly communicating means expressing your needs, your expectations, and your boundaries with your partner, your kids, and your support network, right? So that everybody knows what their responsibility is, right? And you don't start taking on other people's responsibility and increasing to your mental load. Number 8, which I think is super important, is engaging in self-reflection and evaluation. So regularly like check in on your priorities and what are your values and what are your goals as a mom. I think sometimes we set this priority up and then 5 years go by and it hasn't changed, but it actually has changed. So evaluate that. Evaluate what are the things that you're doing and what are the responsibilities that you're taking that align with your vision for how you wanted to be a mom. And then consider letting go of those things that don't contribute positively towards your well-being or your overall happiness. So the scenario that I was telling you about my husband's car and my car actually led to a discussion with my therapist, and I created what I call a to-don't list. And one of the things that I decided is that dealing with the tech in my daughter's school is just not for me. There are like 5 different apps. I don't want to deal with them. There are so many. And so I told my husband, I said, you're the tech person. I think that this is a good job for you. So I just don't want to deal with it anymore. I don't want to pay the tuition. I don't want to log in and put in my driver's license information and the car information and go to the other app and update the parking. It's a lot. And it doesn't look like a lot when I was doing it, but then now I look at it and I'm like, I'm glad somebody else is doing that task. All right. Last but not least is building a supportive community. So connect with other moms who understand and empathize with the mental load of motherhood, right? So one of my favorite groups on Facebook is CRNA Moms. And in that group, like there's a lot of like, what are you guys doing to like lighten the load, right? So look for that. Look for that source of what are some hacks that I can use? What are some things that I can do differently? How can I be more supported? All right. So this is now the part where you can invite your partner to listen in, but I wanted to share some mindset shifts that partners can consider to support you in your mental load. So first of all, I wanted to share some thought errors, and then we'll talk about the mindset shifts. So thought error number 1 is that it's her responsibility, right? So it's assuming, again, that assumption of responsibility. Number 2 is I'm helping her. You're not helping her, you're a team. Number 3 is she knows best. Number 4 is her way or my way. Number 5 is I can't do it like she does. Number 6 is I don't see the mental load. Number 7 is it's her job to ask for help. Number 8 is her self-care is selfish. Number 9 is my role is secondary. And number 10 is I should have all the answers. So again, these are some thought errors that partners have that are contributing to the mental load and they're not supportive. So we'll talk about some mindset shifts that you can take from these thought errors. So number 1 is shifting from it's her responsibility to this mindset of shared responsibility is essential, right? So recognize as the partner that managing the mental load should be a shared responsibility between the two of you. So acknowledging and supporting and actively participating in tasks is the first step. And then also participate in decision making, what you can pick up from the emotional labor, because when you do that, then the overall well-being of your family is fostered. Number 2 is shifting this mindset from I'm helping her to we are a team. When you reframe the perspective from simply assisting your partner or helping her to recognizing that you're both equal partners in managing the mental load, then creates a collaborative experience in your relationship, right? So if you can realize that both of you are expected to contribute and share the responsibility, then you're showing up as a team. When you're thinking I'm helping her, you're showing up as an alliance, and that's not supportive. Number 3 is shifting from she knows best to her input and expertise matter. Value and respect your partner's knowledge and her insights and intuition when it comes to managing the mental load, but understand that her perspectives and contributions are as essential as yours for effective decision making and problem solving, right? So her expertise matter, but it doesn't mean that she knows best, therefore you're excused from knowing, okay? Number 4 is shifting from her way or my way to finding our shared approach. So let go of a notion that there is only one way to do things, only one way to manage task and responsibility, and instead foster a way for you guys to communicate openly and work together so you can have a shared approach that takes into account both of your strengths, preferences, and ideas. Number 5 mindset shift is shifting from I can't do it like she does to I can learn and contribute, right? That is such a growth mindset when you're willing to learn, when you're willing to adapt, right? So challenge the beliefs that the tasks have to be done the way mom does them and recognize that there's multiple ways to skin a cat. You can learn and you can contribute your own unique approach to the situation, and that's valuable, right? So be willing to learn and be willing to adapt. Number 6 mindset shift is shifting from I don't see the mental load to let's acknowledge and address the invisible work. I think this is probably the most important shift, right? You don't have to see it. You don't see the internet, but you know that it works, right? So you don't have to see it, but you acknowledge and address that it exists. So understand it that it may not always be visible to you, but it has a significant impact on your partner's well-being and the dynamics of your family. So take the time to actively acknowledge and appreciate the mental and emotional labor that your partner carries. Number 7 mindset shift is shifting from it's her job to ask for help to I proactively offer support. Instead of waiting for your partner to ask for help, take the initiative to proactively offer your assistance. So anticipate her needs and observe the mental load. Step in without waiting to be asked, right? Actively look for ways in which you can be productive and in which you can share the responsibilities and lighten her load. Number 8 shift is shift from her self-care is selfish to supporting her self-care benefits the whole family. If you recognize that your partner's self-care is not a selfish act, but it's actually crucial in her maintaining a healthy family dynamic, then you would be more supportive. So encourage and actively support her in taking time for herself because it's an ultimate benefit for everyone in the family. Number 9, shift from my role is secondary to my involvement is important. Understand your role as a partner is to support and manage the mental load, right? So actively engage in discussions and decision making and planning. Take ownership of the things that you can do to share the load and to create more balance and support. If you haven't read Eve Radosky's Fair Play, she has some cards that you can even do, like you can distribute the mental load in your family, the labor. There are so many resources for you to be supportive to your partner. Last but not least is shifting from I should have all the answers to seeking knowledge and learning together. So let go of the pressure to have all the answers or know everything about managing the mental load. You don't have to. But if you embrace a mindset of learning and growth, then you will seek the knowledge, resources, and advice together with your partner. And it will also allow you to be more flexible and adaptable to improve as a team. So remember, in order for you to even have these mindset shifts, open communication, empathy, and willingness to participate in sharing the load is critical, right? So you have to be able to ask questions. You have to be able to listen empathetically. You need to be able to embrace the changes that are happening in your family so that you can create a more equitable and supportive partnership, which only benefits your entire family. And it benefits your partner. It benefits your entire family. So I know that was a lot today on the episode, but I really wanted to take a deep dive and give you some actionable things to take over and do. If you are struggling with even communicating your mental load, you're feeling overwhelmed, you're feeling like you can't keep up, I can absolutely help you. And as I have mentioned in the previous episode, I am open for some one-on-one slots between now and August. So if you have been wanting to work with me, I'd love to get on a consultation call with you. I'd love to get you to where this is not a thing that keeps you overwhelmed and stressed and distraught, and you are in a space where you're carving out time for self-care, you're communicating your needs effectively, you're not overwhelmed, you're not burning out, and you actually enjoy your experience as a mom and a partner. So book your consult by clicking the link in the show notes. Yeah, let's get on a consultation, get you planning out the life that you want to live, creating space for you to communicate your needs and get the support that you need. All right, so that's all I have for you today. I will talk to you next week. Bye now. I'm Shira Bergbauer, and you've been listening to the Stethoscopes to Swaddles podcast. New episodes are out every Monday. These episodes are created by me, Shira Bergbauer, and produced by Cassidy Mitchell. If you enjoyed this show or found it helpful, please rate it and review us on Apple Podcasts. If the concepts I share on this podcast resonate with you, or you're ready to change your relationships and mindset, I can help you. If you'd like in-depth, personalized support, I'd love to invite you to apply for my Life and Mindset coaching program. Just imagine you and I every week working together as I teach you the tools to up-level your life. To book your free 1-hour consultation call, go to www.stethoscopestoswaddles.com/consultation. You're doing a great job, Mama. Have a great week. Bye now.